What if every time you brushed off a coincidence, you were hanging up on a cosmic phone call? From the moment you wake up, reality is broadcasting subtle pulses. The lyric that slips through static at the exact second you're thinking about an old friend, the 3 repeating numbers glowing on the microwave clock, the stranger who overhears your question and answers it before you've spoken aloud. You haven't been unlucky at noticing. You've been trained not to. Civilization rewards predictability, so it conditions you to trust only what can be weighed, graphed, monetized. Anything that doesn't fit that grid gets filed under random. Schools drill the habit deeper. Memorize dates, rehearse the one right answer, dismiss intuition as daydreaming. By graduation you're fluent in logic and illiterate in the language the universe actually speaks. Yet the patterns never stopped. They just slipped beneath the threshold of attention. Children still spot them instinctively. They know when someone is about to call. They feel the atmosphere shift before a storm. They draw spirals and repeating symbols without any adult telling them why. But each time a child mentions those moments, an authority figure assigns a rational explanation. That's just your imagination, and the channel goes quieter. The system needs it that way. The quickest method to keep a population compliant is to convince them that nothing beyond official narratives is real. Because the instant you realize the accidents are messages, you have proof that you're entangled with something vaster than any hierarchy. You start asking forbidden questions. If reality can place clues on my path, what else can it do? Great minds who cracked that code, people like Nikola Tesla or Carl Jung, never denied the mechanistic laws of physics. They simply recognized those laws weren't the whole operating system. Jung coined the word synchronicity after studying patients whose private symbols erupted into external events with surgical precision. Tesla built entire inventions after witnessing inner blueprints flash into perfect alignment with real-world materials. They weren't lucky, they were listening. Modern materialism papers over such cases by calling them confirmation bias. You notice 1111 because you're looking for it. You meet the precise expert you need because there are 7 billion humans and eventually probability spits out a match. But that explanation collapses the moment experience becomes statistically absurd. When the exact word you wrote in your journal appears on the next passing billboard, when 3 unrelated people repeat the same obscure phrase within an hour, when an out-of-print book falls off a shelf and opens to the line that solves the problem you've wrestled with for months, probability isn't an answer, it's a dodge. These glitches in the narrative reveal that the universe is not an inert machine. It is an interactive field responsive to consciousness. Quantum experiments already hint that observation shapes particle behavior. Neuroscience shows the brain's reticular activating system filters reality to match what the mind believes is important. Combine those findings and the implication is explosive. Your focus doesn't just interpret events, it helps generate which events become visible. That is the doorway synchronicity opens. Once you glimpse it, the old worldview cracks. You can no longer pretend the world is random because you have felt it aim directly at you. Suddenly the game is no longer about predicting outcomes with linear logic. It's about tuning your inner frequency so the field can reflect it back in unmistakable ways. You now know the signal is real. The next layer is understanding how it is routed. Every synchronistic moment has 3 engines running below the surface. First comes focus. Whatever occupies the foreground of your awareness behaves like a homing beacon. Modern neuroscience calls the switchboard behind that phenomenon the reticular activating system. Once a concept enters its priority queue, the brain sifts through millions of sensory impressions and elevates anything that matches the template. You think about a rare car and suddenly the streets seem full of it. That is level 1 synchronicity, the low-voltage variety created by selective attention. Useful but not world-shifting. The second engine is resonance. Thoughts and emotions carry measurable electromagnetic signatures. Heart rate variability research shows that coherent emotional states broadcast orderly fields extending several feet beyond the body, and those fields entrain nearby biological systems. Translation: feelings are not sealed inside your chest. They leak into the environment and modulate probability. The stronger and cleaner the signal, the more reality organizes around it. This is why 2 people can walk into the same party and one meets the perfect collaborator while the other encounters only closed doors. Their emotional carriers are tuning separate channels. The third engine is the quantum substrate itself. Laboratory experiments repeated on opposite sides of the planet keep confirming that entangled particles flip state in unison no matter the distance. The implication most textbooks tiptoe around is simple. Separation is cosmetic. Beneath spacetime, everything is already touching everything else. When a human mind entertains a vivid intention, that intention behaves like an information packet tunneling through the entanglement network, altering likelihoods long before a physical action is taken. Synchronicities are the ripples produced when those likelihoods surface into three-dimensional events. Focus, resonance, entanglement. Combine the three and you have a working model for why the right book falls off the shelf or why the elevator doors open on the precise conversation you needed to overhear. It is not because some cosmic bureaucrat scheduled it. It is because your internal broadcast locked onto coordinates already present in the unified field and magnetized them into your timeline. But if the mechanism is universal, why do some lives look like deserts while others bloom with impossible timing? The gatekeeper is belief. A mind trained to ridicule anything nonlinear forces the signal to route through layers of doubt, and each layer bleeds voltage. By the time a message reaches the surface, it is so faint it can be dismissed. A mind that grants the possibility of meaningful coincidence removes those dampers, allowing the surge to arrive intact. That is why patterns escalate after the first one is acknowledged. You turn the amplifier on. There is a danger here. The moment people taste real-time feedback from reality, they often slip into superstition, chasing omens the way gamblers chase hot streaks. That is a misunderstanding of the protocol. Synchronicity is conversational. Obsessively demanding signs every hour is like refreshing a chat window before the other person has finished typing. Eventually the connection times out. The field respects clarity, not anxiety. Ask once with conviction, move your attention to preparation, and the return ping arrives when the path is clear, not when your impatience peaks. Another trap is outsourcing agency entirely. Some hear that the universe is interactive and decide to abandon all initiative, waiting for full instructions before lifting a finger. That paralysis is just the ego wearing spiritual clothes. The field requires partnership. Notice the nudge translated into motion, and the circuitry powers up again for the next relay. No motion, no circuit. Which brings us to the real payoff. Synchronicities are not decorative. They are orientation markers inside a living labyrinth. Each one confirms or corrects your trajectory. Ignore enough of them and the maze resets to its default corridors of randomness. Follow them consistently and the walls slide aside, revealing passages that appear impossible to observers who still believe in straight lines. History's outliers used this navigation system long before it had a name. Tesla received complete schematics for alternating current generators and flashes of internal lightning that later matched the physical prototypes to the screw. Wolfgang Pauli consulted his dreams and noticed bizarre overlaps between dream symbols and particle discoveries, then mailed the data to Jung, who coined synchronicity after cross-referencing them with patient case files. These men were not dabbling in woo, they were quietly mapping shortcuts that bypassed linear problem-solving. Their public breakthroughs were simply the parts polite society could digest. You do not need a laboratory to prove the principle. Observe your next ordinary week. Pick a question that matters. Hold it gently, no begging, no bargaining, then let the day unfold. The response may arrive as a comment from a stranger, a phrase on a billboard, a sudden cancellation that frees an afternoon you needed. When it lands, treat it as valid. Act on the data. Watch how reality recalibrates. Repeat. Within 30 days, the chain of improbabilities will be longer than you can recount without sounding delusional to anyone still locked in the old worldview. One caution: the field is honest. If your underlying motive is domination, defeat, or validation, the synchronicities you attract will mirror that frequency, often through crises posed as shortcuts. Those crises are not punishment, they are echoes of the vibration you broadcast. Shift the signal and the echoes change. So what happens when millions of people start using this system consciously? The control narrative phrase. Advertising loses power because orchestrated scarcity and fear no longer hypnotize. Centralized authority weakens because citizens guided by direct feedback become less susceptible to manufactured consensus. That is why mainstream culture ridicules synchronicity at every turn. A population fluent in its own guidance is ungovernable by manipulation. You now possess the schematic. Reality is an echo chamber that amplifies whichever station your dial is set to. Choose static and you will hear more static. Choose coherent intent and the world lines up to cooperate. The only remaining step is the one no video can perform for you. Keep the channel open long enough for evidence to accumulate past denial. At that point you will not need more testimonials, theories, or warnings. You will have measurable results. A life that bends in your direction with uncanny timing. And once that happens, the idea of coincidence will feel as outdated as bloodletting. Use the broadcast wisely. Spend enough time tracking alignments and an unexpected pattern emerges. The universe starts speaking in your native dialect. If you are a musician, the guidance arrives as melodies. If you are an engineer, it appears through schematics. If poetry lives in you, the signs rhyme. The field custom codes its language to the receiver. This personalization is not sentimental. It is efficient code. A message that bypasses intellectual translation lands faster and triggers action before doubt rallies. That personalization reveals a second layer of design. You are not meant to decode every synchronicity someone else reports. Their symbols belong to their circuitry. Try to hijack them and the current shorts out. The only reliable compass is the set of motifs that repeatedly light up inside your own story. These motifs form a private lexicon. Learn it. When an image or number or phrase starts echoing through unrelated contexts, annotate it the way cartographers once marked coastlines. Here be guidance. Over time, your lexicon evolves into a living glossary that no external authority can counterfeit. From that vantage, disbelief becomes a weak argument. You no longer need to convert skeptics. The results weave directly into your days. A spontaneous detour saves you from a traffic pileup. A childhood hobby resurfaces and morphs into a revenue stream. An overheard sentence answers a moral dilemma that kept you awake for weeks. When these threads layer into a tapestry visible only from your vantage, outside validation loses relevance. The matrix of happenstance has morphed into an interactive dashboard. Yet every dashboard can flood with false alerts. The mind, once it tastes pattern, starts craving pattern and will paint meaning onto noise. The safeguard is sensation. True synchronicity carries a somatic resonance, gooseflesh, a drop in stomach gravity, a quiet click behind the sternum. Counterfeits feel forced, agitated, or theatrically important. Cultivate the difference and you keep the channel clean. There is another hazard, fixation on the messenger. People who experience a powerful lineup often freeze the symbol into an idol. They turn the number, the animal, the tarot card into a superstition and demand it repeat on command. That reverses polarity. The field that once felt fluid now feels contractual. If a sign refuses to appear, anxiety floods in and the frequency collapses. The solution is simple. Appreciate the courier, then release it. Symbols are seasonal. When their job is done, they exit the stage so the next chapter can speak in its own tongue. So far we have talked about personal timelines, but synchronicity gains extra voltage when groups share it intentionally. A circle sets a mutual aim, maintains a field of coherent emotion, and collective alignments spike. Scientific studies on group meditation reducing urban crime hint at this amplification. Yet the effect is not reserved for monasteries. Start a small mastermind committed to creativity and watch parallel ideas arrive in each member's inbox on the same morning. The underlying equation is additive. Shared focus multiplies nodal points where reality can intersect with the group intent. Use that responsibly. A mass broadcast of fear generates cascading crises. A broadcast of coherent service opens improbable corridors of aid. Internal skeptics often ask, if synchronicity is real, why doesn't it solve everything instantaneously? The answer hides in bandwidth. Guidance respects the nervous system's ability to integrate change. Overloading the channel shatters coherence. The field supplies just enough improbable events to stretch perception without frying it. As capacity grows, the dosage increases. Think of it as cosmic titration, an intelligent drip calibrated to expand your bandwidth at a sustainable rate. Eventually, guidance outgrows the need for dramatic punctuation. Early on you required billboards and repeating digits to stay awake. Later the nudge is a micro shift in air pressure, a subtle wave of clarity. That is not regression, it is intimacy. Two friends who trust each other do not shout across rooms, they tilt an eyebrow and whole strategies pass between them. The universe adopts the same economy with practitioners who no longer need spectacle to stay aligned. Practical reality still demands schedules, contracts, taxes, traffic lights. Synchronicity does not erase logistics, it optimizes them. Flights delay to protect you from storms. A lost email forces a pause that reveals a better partnership. You still act, sign, ship, but the timing feels less like push and more like glide. People watching from the outside label it luck. Only you feel the calibration humming underneath. And that hum has an ethical undertone. Once you recognize reality will choreograph in response to your interior state, integrity stops being a moral suggestion and becomes an operational requirement. Deception scrambles the signal. Manipulation backfires through mirrored chaos. Alignment rewards transparency because the field can route clear instructions only through uncluttered channels. At this juncture, the old question about purpose dissolves. Instead of asking what you should do with your life, you notice where the current already runs strongest and you paddle there. Contribution emerges not as a duty but as the inevitable overflow of coherence. You build, teach, heal, invent because those acts feel as natural as exhaling. Synchronicity, once a novelty, becomes the baseline operating system. Quiet, continuous, almost mundane in its reliability. Some will say this perspective is optimistic to the point of delusion. History, they argue, is littered with accidents that produce no hidden order at all. The rejoinder is not philosophical, it is experiential. Test the broadcast. Declare an intention devoid of greed or harm, hold the signal with steady emotion, release attachment, and document what unfurls over the next 90 days. Collect the data. A skeptic armed with results is no longer a skeptic. They are a practitioner who found the switch. Reality is not offering us reassurance. It is offering collaboration. The invitation stands open. Step into the conversation and the improbable becomes protocol. Ignore it and life continues, just grayer, slower, drained of the music playing beneath the visible. The dial is in your hands. Long-term alignment is less about technique than hygiene. Just as the body accumulates dust and sweat, the psyche accumulates static. An overload of opinion, unslept nights, food that dulls perception, timelines that do not belong to you. Left unchecked, the static muffles guidance until even the clearest signal sounds like background hiss. Maintenance is simple. Periods of silence, honest movement, nourishment that leaves clarity rather than heaviness. Nothing mystical. Only the minimum conditions in which sensitivity can stay switched on. Community acts as a second form of hygiene. Solitude sharpens reception, but shared reality shapes the broadcast. Spend weeks in rooms thick with cynicism and your field contracts to match. Spend time with people who treat coincidence like conversation and your bandwidth expands by osmosis. You do not have to preach. Frequencies entrain without debate. Choose company the way an instrument maker chooses wood, by resonance. Occasionally the dialogue with reality will seem to pause. Signs dry up, flow feels flat. This is not punishment or abandonment. It is the still point in a sine wave. The field inhales, gathers new trajectories, waits for your next coherent output. Resist the urge to manufacture drama just to feel movement. Quiet seasons are integration chambers. When the next sequence of alignments arrives, they will carry architecture you could not have conceived during the lull. As understanding deepens, another paradox appears. Free will and guidance are not opposites. The more consciously you choose, the richer the synchronicities become. Decision is the match, the universe is the oxygen. Refusal to decide leaves the match unlit. Once ignited, the flame dances in shapes you would never script, yet every curve reflects the spark you struck. Collaboration, not surrender. Conversation, not dictation. Eventually the distinction between ordinary and extraordinary dissolves. The missed bus, the sudden urge to call a forgotten friend, the sentence that rewires an argument. Each event carries equal weight because each is recognized as a tile in the same mosaic. Life stops alternating between magic and monotony. It becomes a single fabric whose pattern is always speaking, whether whispering through small delays or roaring through breathtaking convergences. If there is a final lesson, it is this: reality meets you at the level of attention you offer. Ignore it and it keeps polite distance. Honor it and it leans in with stories, shortcuts, improbable gifts. The dialogue never forces itself, it waits for your respect. Offer that respect and the conversation becomes endless, intimate, tailored, less a series of miracles than a steady companionship with the intelligence beneath appearances. From here forward, the question is not whether signs will come. They already ride on every breath. The question is whether you will cultivate enough stillness to notice and enough courage to respond. Answer yes often enough and the path beneath your feet will reorganize until walking it feels like reading a sentence the universe wrote just for you, each step a syllable, each day a new line, the whole of it spelling a life that could never have been composed by chance.